track down? And if you do, where do you put them? How do you do that? And is that really fair? It's not really counting students in the multiple boxes that they checked. It's not really true to what is trying to be done. So Kristen Wren in 2004 also had 4 questions for assessment. I know we have some assessment folks out there, so we always try to include stuff for you as well. And so she has 4 questions. If you're starting to think about this on your campuses, look at it, have conversations about it, where might you start? Well, are there programs and services that are already offered for monoracial groups, where I had mentioned centers and those types of things earlier, but are those same services offered for multiracial groups or for multiracial people? That could be in various ways, but if you have something specific to a racial group, then is that also offered for multiracial people? Do multiracial students have equal access to resources? If there are scholarships specifically for certain racial categories, then are those also offered for multiracial students? Are there student organizations on your campus? And how do you know if there are enough multiracial students to start a student group? That's kind of what we're thinking about right now. If you measure student satisfaction, and you do break it down by race, are multiracial students as satisfied with their campus experiences as other students, and in particular students of color? And then in what ways do outcomes? I love outcomes. That's a very exciting term. And so what ways do outcomes vary for multiracial students compared to the population as a whole, and monoracial students? Okay, I think that is pretty much it. I can only talk for 40 minutes. Sorry, but I would love to move to questions. I put my email on there as well, or phone number. If you want to chat with me offline, that would be fine also.
Great, thank you, CeCe. And we have about 10 minutes or so for questions. So if you wanted to type them into the chat box, the question box on the GoToWebinar screen, you can, or if you're on Twitter, if you want to type a question and do a hashtag break drink, and we'll get it fed to us that way also. So CeCe, it looks like what you're saying as far as the data collecting is there is no common standard across campuses on how to ask the question of ethnicity.
Right. Yes. And not ethnicity, I would say race. And I would argue race and ethnicity are 2 different things. But yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think across the board there are common ways. I think we have had common ways in the past, you know, looking at 5 or 6 racial categories, but we're in a different arena now.
Mm-hmm. And so at this point, are you suggesting that the census information is the kind of the best way to go at this point?
I think that probably is, but I mean, I can look back on the 2000 census data reporting, and it's, you know, I showed you the counting, the 2 races, 3 races, 4 races thing, but even in that, if you think of counting 2 or more races, and then I know on the census website they have huge spreadsheets of what those categories were. I mean, there are so many variations of those racial categories. That's a huge thing, but I still think it's important to go down the road of at least exploring how you would list that out.
Okay. I have another question about the physical space.
Yes.
Are there examples of colleges that have a multiracial student center?
Yeah, that's a good question. Not that I can think of off the top of my head, but I know that they are out there. I know that there are, I wouldn't say a center itself. I don't think we're there yet, but I do think that there are student organizations starting, and I think that's where, as those groups grow, I think we will see more of a push for students who say, you know what, we want a center as well. There are lots of centers on campuses or spaces dedicated to specific racial groups. We would like one as well. I know Colorado State just started a student organization for multiracial, or the students, they started it for multiracial people. But a center itself, I haven't seen it.
Okay. What about, some campuses have like a multicultural center?
Yeah.
And then some campuses have like centers or spaces for specific ethnicity groups.
Yeah.
Has there been talk about that also?
Yeah, we have talked about, I'm part of NASPA, as I mentioned earlier. We are just starting they do knowledge communities, and so what that means are specific, affinity groups or whatnot. So we're just starting a multiracial knowledge community through NASPA. And so we've been having lots of conversations about what our campuses are doing. What I think would be really interesting is to at least talk with our multicultural centers to see if a multiracial group would even be, have students talked about it. Sometimes students, you go back and forth. There's a debate out there of, well, if there were enough multiracial students or mixed kids and they wanted to start an organization, they would start it. You would see them out there, right? Versus, well, are the identity issues, and it's a little scary sometimes for multiracial students, and so can we kind of help ease that along? It would be interesting. So we've been talking about not creating it ourselves as administrators, meaning a multiracial group, but maybe finding some students and having that conversation, or if you hear it on campus, one or two students who mention it, it's like, so what do you think about starting a group? Those kinds of conversations, I don't know if those are happening. Well, they're happening with the people in my group, but I don't know how wide that is. Sorry, that was a long answer.
No, that's fine.
Sorry.
Yeah, and I don't know what the question was coming from, but I know on some campuses it goes back to kind of choosing one mentality, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a question about resources? Is there like a central website that has resources that people can look into this further?
Let's see. Well, Maven, the Maven Foundation, M-A-V-I-N, is a great place to start. They have, I'm going to get the name wrong, but I know there's a link off of there. I think it's the Mixed Heritage Center, which I think is based out of California or Seattle. I can't remember where they're based out of, but tons of articles on the topic, groups around the country. There isn't a group in Austin, but I've been thinking about starting like a mixed family or a mixed person group in my own community. So there's links to the different neighborhood or city groups out there. There's the Association of Multiethnic Americans, AMEA. That's also a great resource. There's some things out there about raising mixed kids. There's a mixed kids resource book as well that's out there. I think you can get it through the AMEA. Yeah, there's lots of stuff out there.
Has this been a book that was recommended? Is it called Half or Half and Half?
Half and Half. Yeah, it's a great book.
Yeah, that I've heard highly recommended also.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah, there's Kristen Wren. She, as I mentioned, her as a researcher. There are so many more researchers nowadays. She wrote the book though on multiracial college students, and she, I think it was, I don't know if it was part of her dissertation or whatnot, but she has a whole book on the topic. But what I do know is that there are so many, I feel like it's an issue of voice. I feel like there are so many more mixed researchers who are multiracial themselves who are now doing research. And so that is very exciting.
So this is probably still a very, I guess, new research field that we should kind of keep an eye on for what's coming.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we've moved from, Kristen Wren is a white woman. So we've moved from, white women specifically researching the topic for a variety of reasons. White women who have adopted transracially, who've done international adoptions, that type of thing, kind of in the arena of the research. And now we've moved to people who are multiracial, who are also doing lots of identity work out there.
Great. And I think I don't see any last questions.
Okay.
I don't think Gary has any questions to share at this point either. So, CeCe, thanks for sharing.
You are welcome.
Yes, very exciting for our first conference.
Yeah, it is exciting. Well, you're welcome anytime. Obviously, I can talk for 45 minutes. I didn't think I could do it.
and as research develops and more things happen, I'd love to have you back to share, what's progressing as far in the field or what new research is happening.
Yeah.
Also for future conferences.
I am working on my dissertation right now, which is on, if anyone's interested or wants to chat about that, happy to do that. I'm working on multiracial college students. I'm actually looking at biracial students, African American and white, involved in student organizations and how that has or is affecting their racial identity. So if anyone wants to chat about that, I'm happy to talk about it.
Great. Thank you so much, CeCe.
Yep.